Good morning. It's Gerry from Berean Nation, and I thought this morning I'd like to share with you a brief devotional thought from my readings today. Um, I was in First Samuel chapter 4, among other places, and what I saw in the chapter, now, the chapter itself is where um, Samuel is still very small. Eli is the priest in the house of God. His sons Hophni and Phinehas are active also as priests in the house of God. They're not righteous men. The texts previous to this tell us that. And actually, right in 1 Samuel 3. And Eli is perhaps an unfaithful priest. He is blind at this point, so he has no vision. There's kind of a funny analogy there, but whether it's meant or not, and I think it is, he's blind and he can't see at this point in his life. He's very old, actually. The text tells us he's 98 years of age. And the people of God are fighting against the Philistines. This is sort of an ongoing thing, has been all the way through the book of Judges. And so they go to battle with the Philistines. They experience a loss, and about 4,000 people die. So it's not a small loss. So they get together, the leadership does, and they say, let's get the Ark of the Covenant up here because that's where the power of God is. And that's going to win the battle for us. If we bring that Ark of the Covenant up to here, that's going to win for us. And so they did. They sent for it. It was brought up. Hophni and Phinehas actually went up with it. It arrived at the battleground and into the camp of the men of Israel, and they saw it and they got so pumped up, would be the word I'd use, about it. They started to shout, and they shouted so loud that the earth shook. So the Philistines went, uh-oh, we're in trouble now. Their gods have come to the battlefield. O men of the Philistines, be brave, or you're going to be their slaves. Better to be dead than to be a slave, was their mentality. What I saw from the chapter, well, I have to explain what happened. Israel lost, and Israel lost big time. 30,000 warriors were killed, and the Ark of God was captured. Hophni and Phinehas were both slain, and the fellow who escaped, and he used the word escape, not me, uh, ran back to tell Eli what happened. Eli was so overcome at the loss of the Ark of the Covenant that he fell off his chair and broke his neck and died. So Israel lost big time. And what I saw in the chapter was really the consequences of putting your faith in the wrong thing. In fact, it's there's this belief that this talisman or this artifact will help you against the forces of darkness. This prayer to Michael the archangel to defend us in battle, perhaps you've heard that. This for a touch of this particular piece of wood, which was, among other false pieces of wood, was actually from the cross where Christ was crucified. This is the Holy Grail, the cup that caught the blood of Christ. And to place your faith in these objects, or even in routine, rote, ritual, and prayer, like repeating that thing they call the Lord's Prayer that to me isn't really the Lord's Prayer at all. It was his instructional pattern. When his disciples prayed, he taught them to pray. This is how you pray. He didn't say, this is what you say. He said, this is how you pray. You worship God, you forgive others, etc. I was actually in one of those chapters this morning too, Luke chapter 11. But um, placing your faith in the wrong thing could result not only in your spiritual death, but in fact the death of many others. I'm not even going to try to imagine a situation where that could happen, but it could, because it did. They placed their faith in the Ark of the Covenant. So, in their doctrine, I suppose, one way of looking at it. And everybody still died. Because Israel, in this instruction from the Old Testament, thought that the power of God rested in the physical object, the Ark of the Covenant. It did not. It rested where it always has rested, with God. From when the nation started to depart from Israel, really right at the end of the book of Joshua and into Judges, all the way through Ruth, it was actually in the middle of a great departure from God. Judges would rise up every lifetime or so, every generation, and they would judge Israel, and Israel would sort of do okay. But the key phrase of the book of Judges, which is pretty much right before the book of 1 Samuel, where this is, was every man did that which was right in his own eyes, because there was no king in Israel. No one was looking to the King of Kings, certainly, who wanted to be their king, and yet they would not submit to his authority and rule. They placed their faith in the Ark of the Covenant, assuming it was the power of God, when the power of God rested where it always has, with God, from whom Israel had long departed. Now, I think the lesson here is kind of multifaceted. Here are a couple of things I saw about it. There are more, but this is all I'm going to take the time to say. The first thing is that God will not share his glory with another. Not even something that he created to be ordered to be created for him. And the second thing I saw was that God will not hear the unrighteous demands for support or action, even if it's quote unquote in his name, from people who are using their religion or faith tradition, that's the newspeak for that word, for the same thing, but really have no faith. The demand, the demands really are a form of blasphemy and a taking of the name of the Lord in vain. It's not really appropriate to say, oh, let's bring down these artifacts because in them the power of God is revealed, like Raiders of the Lost Ark style. Oh, we've got the Ark of God, now we're going to win the Second World War, thought Nazi Germany. And God, who will not share his glory with another, did not honor that request. That's one way of looking at that movie. But really, the power did not rest in the ark. The ark was captured. The power rested with God, who was offended with his people and their actions. Do you understand the analogy? Don't take God's name in vain and then 5 minutes later turn to him and say, heal my Aunt Bertha's big toe. You are praying a prayer you are not authorized to demand. First of all, you have no fear of God. God is mighty and holy, the King of the universe. And if you will not respect that fact, understand that you have no rights in his presence. And as a Christian, if you have turned to him in faith and repentance, he has given you the right to approach the throne of grace boldly to make requests, not demands. And those requests must always be according to his will. And if they are not, they will not be answered. James tells us that in chapter 4 of that particular letter. He says, you have not because you ask not, and you have not even though you're asking, because you're asking with wrong motives. So, beloved, pay attention to your attitude when serving the Lord and praying and all of that. Because if you don't, some serious things can befall you and ultimately separate you into the pile of goats that will be condemned when the Father returns with his Son. So, when Christ returns, and with the authority of the Father is what I mean by that. And, beloved, this stuff's serious as a heart attack. Don't just dismiss this. The Lord bless you. Follow me on social media. You can find us at BereanNation.com. You can find us on Facebook as The Berean Nation. You can find us on Instagram as Pastor Gerry, that's me. You can email me at pastorger@outlook.com. Pastor has an E on the end, it's the Latin spelling. You can even phone us at the number on our website, BereanNation.com. And I answer my own calls. So, you know how to get in touch with us if you have any questions or comments on this. The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face to shine upon you and give you peace, his peace. Now, having said that, study the scriptures daily to make sure what's so. Lord bless you.